we are actually seeing the entire planet move towards what we call tipping points, the points where we lose control. No one can really tell us exactly what's going to happen, except that it's going to be big, it's going to be ugly, it's going to lead to even more emissions, and we are not going to be able to reverse it.
Welcome to Planet Earth, our loving home. Scientific studies from around the world conclude that the cycle of producing and consuming animal products is directly responsible for the heating of our planet, and the consequences of climate change are frightening for humans, animals, and the environment. The polar ice caps are melting, sea levels are rising, droughts, floods, and extreme weather events are occurring with increasing frequency, and drinking water is rapidly becoming scarce. If we do not stop this cycle, runaway climate change will become a reality, with humankind being unable to save our planet. On today's program, we'll examine several critical signs that show we're on the verge of disaster and need to take immediate, rapid action to correct our current course.
One of the real problems that we are facing now is the amount of people respect to the amount of land for producing food to enable those people to live. So the stress that we are putting on land and water more than anything is extremely high, because growing plants and growing food for animals is what weighs more on agriculture, and animals are basically being fed in order to feed humans.
The 2010 book, Livestock in a Changing Landscape, by Henning Steinfeld, Chief of the Livestock Information, Sector Analysis, and Policy Branch of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, and other experts, presents the following sobering facts about how animal agriculture has overtaken our planet. Livestock production occupies more than 1/4 of Earth's land mass. Production of animal feed consumes about 1/3 of Earth's total arable land. Only 1/3 of the nutrients fed to livestock are absorbed. The resulting animal waste seriously pollutes land and water.
There's a tremendous amount of resources that are needed to maintain a meat diet for cattle and other animals. It requires a lot of grain, it requires a lot of chemicals, it requires often conversion of land. So it's a very inefficient way to feed ourselves, to rely on animal.
The amount of grain used to feed livestock around the globe could easily sustain nearly 2 billion people and end world food shortages. The large-scale destruction of forests to create pasture land for livestock grazing and growing animal feed is alarming, and once the land is cleared, it can no longer function as a carbon sink.
In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, the clearing of land required to have grazing for cattle and other ruminants, the livestock produce a tremendous amount of methane and nitrous oxide, that there's the soil degradation, the pollution of waterways. There's a number of deleterious effects of livestock management and use. So, and I think overall the meat-based consumption, just the ecological footprint in terms of use of water, air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, degradation of soil, and so on. These environmental problems are greatly exacerbated by the meat industry.
In the 2009 paper, Livestock and Climate Change, published in World Watch magazine, it is estimated that more than 51% of human-caused global greenhouse gas emissions arise from the continual production and consumption of animal products. In the past, efforts to mitigate global warming have focused almost exclusively on lowering carbon dioxide emissions. But we now know that although reducing CO2 is critical, even if the entire world switched to a zero-carbon economy and lifestyle today, it would take thousands of years for this gas to dissipate.
For the moment, it hasn't been highlighted enough. It's mostly we're talking about emissions by cars or by the industry, but also there is an issue with cattle contributing to the emissions.
Well, the focus is mainly on the CO2, but we need an effort on all gases. So it is important to focus on other gases than in CO2.
Confined animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, produce 400 different gases, including the short atmospheric lifetime greenhouse gases hydrogen sulfide, nitrous oxide, and methane, all of which have a powerful impact on global warming. Over a 20-year period, methane alone has 72 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. By far the largest source of anthropogenic methane emissions is the livestock industry, and we may not even be correctly accounting for the amounts this industry releases. In June 2010, scientists at the University of Missouri, USA, concluded that the method used by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to measure methane emissions from manure lagoons, pits which sometimes hold millions of liters of animal waste from factory farms, underestimates the true amount released by as much as 65%. A global shift from a meat-based to a plant-based diet will reduce the effects of global warming much more dramatically than will a reduction in the use of fossil fuels. Thus, driving less and using energy-saving light bulbs, though wise choices, cannot quickly cool our planet like halting the madness that is animal agriculture, a completely unnecessary activity that's putting all life on Earth at risk. When we return, we'll examine the role of subsidies for livestock farming and their relation to environmental damage. Please stay tuned to Supreme Master Television.